So first of all, I'd like to thank you for taking a chance on me and giving me an opportunity to explain this to you. I hope it will make sense. If it doesn't make sense or you have any questions during the presentation, that's fine as well. Okay, I hope it is not going to put me off the track too much. So at any point, just stop me and just say, oh, Kat, you are not making sense, just can you explain? So I'll try to do that, okay? So my name is Katarina Otcenas, if you will, in Slovak. And I'm currently an UX researcher for London Stock Exchange Group. But the reason why I'm here is because I studied business psychology here in UK at the University of Leeds. So I'm really excited that I'm from Slovakia. I'm really positively surprised that actually you can study it in Slovakia. So I thought I could just explain some practical stuff to you. So today I'm going to cover what I do. So it's design thinking and UX research. And I will tap into UX design, but I will explain why, but that's not what I do. So today I'm going to tell you like why we do design thinking in, well, basically I work in tech. So usually it comes from tech environment or tech industry, but you can apply it on, even tangible products. And then, well, I will explain what's UX research, and as well I tap into it, I said, UX design a little bit, and then what's design thinking, and then how, there's a little case study in the appendix, but I'm not going to cover it because of time. But I said to Lukas that he can send you the presentation and then you can just come to it in your own time, if you will. Okay, any questions before we begin? All good. Okay.
We have no idea what user experience and design thinking is about, so we are pretty curious.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you these pictures. So if you Google design failures, there is this article and you have like plenty of pictures like this, and this is why we do it essentially. So in practice, it happens that, someone has a good idea and they think, oh, people need to use this product, and that's great, everyone needs to have it, and they build the thing, and then as you can see, it's not usable. But essentially what we try to do, we try to make products that are usable and intuitive, and intuitiveness and simplification is a big part of what we're trying to do. So in tech products, it usually means like, even if you're a new user, you use the thing first time and you know how to do it. So that's why we try to do the research how to bring or develop products that are really intuitive and simple. And in practice, when they build it, this doesn't happen. Okay. So user experience research. So as I mentioned, it's a research type. So, well, I'm not going to read this long definition, but it's basically we involve end users. So those are users that use the product. So we usually talk to people, even if you're trying to build a new product and it's obviously not built, you try to catch the end users of similar products to yours and speak to them and find out how they use it, why, what they like, what they don't like, and stuff like that. And you use research methods that are based on traditional research methods, sometimes not really. So it's really creative, but I will explain in design thinking process how we do it. What else there is? Yeah, and we try to identify, obviously, as I said, what people liked, what's their motivation to use the product, how they use it, and in what environment they use it. So we try to fit the purpose or value to their lives. So it's beyond how they use the product. It's even like what they do before they use the product or after they use it. And then we try to bring recommendations, basically. And try to, as well, the big part of the role is as well talk to wider stakeholders, and stakeholders are people who are building the product. So they can be different teams. So these are basically internal teams usually, and you try to make them believe in your recommendations and try to persuade them that they would implement them. And so design thinking, lean and agile. So I'm not going to cover everything because obviously I just wanted to demonstrate that it's a little bit more complicated than what I'm going to try to explain today. But, for the beginning, it's really useful just this first part of the graph, which is design thinking. So it really depends where the organization is in this, if they're just in the design thinking stage or lean startup or organization and then agile. So it really depends, you know, on the maturity of the product and processes in the organization, if they adopted this way of working or not. So usually if you, for example, if you work on startup and they don't have final version of the product, you usually start with design thinking and stages, which we call empathize. So this practice, now we try to talk to end users. So usually you just use interviews or other qualitative methods, and then define, you just analyze the data you collected, and then you ideate. And then it really depends where you work, if it's big organization or small organization. And then ideation usually comes from design teams or product teams, which I will explain a little bit in next slide, I think. And then when you move to lean startup, it's usually when you build something which we call minimum viable product. And then you can test it with end users. You just do prototypes of the product, basically. So it's not final version. It's just something you can already test. And then again, like it just goes in circles. So then you build something, then you test it, then you learn, then you implement recommendations, then you test it again. And when you feel confident that you want to just launch it and let users to use it, then basically you move to agile. But getting organization to work agile is, I think, the biggest challenge, because as people tend to say, its mindset is not the way of working. So you need to really make sure. And as well, when you start with design thinking, it's usually more time consuming, and you know, the more, what's this side, right side, the more on the right you move, the quicker.
Katka, yeah. Mario would like to ask a question. He raised his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
I wanted to ask, I'm trying to get an understanding of the graph, but I'm having a hard time doing it. Yeah. Is the x-axis, you know, like time bound, or is it just like a visual representation that has no mandatory linear progress?
Yeah, so basically this is always, it depends on the organization, you know. And what I learned in bigger organization, it takes more time than in smaller organization, because startup, usually it's a startup at the moment, they already know what's this, and they already start the organization or the startup with this mindset. So they try to implement already.
So it is not mandatory to start from design thinking. You could also start from lean startup, or am I wrong?
Yeah, because sometimes I know people who work for startups and they already have minimal viable product. So that means they did the discovery phase. So what's the design thinking stages? Empathize, define, ideate, or empathize and define is something which we call discovery or foundational research. So in this research, you understand the users and you try to pinpoint, as I said, like their motivation to use your product or pain points with similar products or your product. And then according to that, you build something already. So sometimes startup, if they're lucky enough and they have money, you know, they can start from kind of lean because they already have something to test and people are already using it. So, but, you know, in large organizations is they usually work from, do you know what's bottom up and top down approach? Yeah, so, you know, traditional companies or companies that are out there basically for many, many years, they usually know the top down approach. So that means that management wants to do something and then they push it, you know, and it's like, I think it's called waterfall, yeah, decision making. And this is actually bottom up approach. So this comes from users. And then like you try to advocate what your users want. And what your
they call it waterfall project management, and that means that the managers say what they want to achieve. They ask the client, the client says, we would like to have this kind of a product. And then they have the work breakdown structure. They have all of the steps, the milestones, and they prepare the whole product. And then they show it. In the end, they show it to the client. And very often the client is very surprised that he wanted something completely different.
Yeah. So this is actually opposite of it, you know.
So,
what you as business psychologists, like for example, we're covering in leads. So any research you do as a business psychologist should come from users. So this is really transferable to any kind of research you will do as a consultant. You should talk to end users. So for example, organization per se, it's a system, you know, so end users are the employees. So you always try to, you know, when you try to implement anything like job design or selection, blah, blah, you always go to people who do the job. You know, you don't go to people who don't, and they're just management, you know, and they want something built because.
Katka, I have a question. To be able to understand design thinking and to have something tangible, let's assume that there is 15 people in here, and let's say that we bought an office or a classroom, or let's say an office, and we would like to design it to boost creativity and boost cooperation. And how would you apply the design thinking process to this kind of a task?
Oh, you want to promote collaboration?
Yeah, we would like to design our office, and we would like to have it like really something that will trigger our creativity and will help us cooperate, and we will feel comfortable being there. So we have an empty space, and we would like to create something. And how would you apply those design thinking steps? What would you do as an external consultant using the design thinking approach? How would you approach us?
So you are more consultant than me, so correct me if I'm wrong, but like if I wanted to, for example, apply this to workspace design, and so you have different teams working and you want them to basically, for example, talk more together. So yeah, so it's like in this type of organization as well, we work with designers, we work with product managers, we need to work with CSMs, which talk to customers if they have a problem. So you should just, you know, go to talk to each team and, you know, try to explore. And it's like, okay, so what? Yeah, I don't know that like from the top of my head what I would ask, but basically you need to talk to each team and try to find, you know, overlap as well, like what they find, you know, challenging in current collaboration, why they don't, because it often happens actually that teams in organizations don't work together, you know, or they feel like threatened by each other somehow. So then try to find out, which we call pain points. So you go and you ask, okay, so why you feel this way, you know, and like, what, you know, or was your motivation behind you could work with them?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it that you would not only talk to me as the manager or as your client saying, okay, we would like to have a creative space, but you would talk to all of the team members to find out what their particular needs are?
Yes, definitely wouldn't talk, like not probably managers would be the last people.
All right, okay.
But it really depends, you know, because for example, my director, she's amazing, so we get along really well. But like I used to work in organizations where, you know, my boss wasn't really my friend, you know, so they don't know what I feel. You know, so, and as well, like, you know, this is when you apply psychology. So, you know, sometimes people feel comfortable talking, you know, in private setting, and they, you know, or for example, if you want to design survey, people just, you know, when I was doing surveys, I was laughing because some people just went and then you are just reading it. And it's just so funny, you know, because they feel like, oh, it's anonymized, so I can say whatever. So it's actually really fun sometimes to read. Mainly open questions, answers. Yeah. Does it make sense?
Keep on going. We will find out.
Okay, so
it does make sense. It's good.
Yeah. So basically, I will just cover this first, emphasize, define, ideate, but you know, it's really comprehensive topic. So I don't blame you, you know, like it's really a lot of theory to cover before you make sense out of it. So for purpose of this presentation, design thinking is a good start where you start to like your comprehension of the topic. So basically design thinking is solution-based. I can't actually see the definition because I have you there. So design thinking is solution-based, it's iterative process. So it means like solution-based, we always try to find solutions. So iterative is just because it's not linear. So you always repeat the stages. So you start with empathize, then you define by analysis, and then you create recommendations in ideation phase, you engage other teams as well, and then they prototype something, and then again we test it, and then again we go to empathizing. So again we do the research, then we again define, and then, you know, and that's why I said it's always iterative or running in circles, because there is always improvement to make. So you always constantly try to find what doesn't work for users and try to make it better. And it's always like you find something which people don't like or that doesn't work. So yes, so, and involved end users, as I mentioned, you need to talk to people who are using the system, because for example, in practice, what happens even here, you know, people come to us, to research team, they say they want something, and then they want to test it on their colleagues, you know, and we're like, no, you can't test it on your colleagues. Why? Because you are biased, you know, because you are building the system. So you know how it works. So how can you test it on yourself, you know, if you know how it works? So that's why you always should include end users. And then, as I said, you try to understand their daily lives. So, you know, when I'm doing interviews, I ask them, okay, so how, you know, I used to work on this e-learning platform. So there were students or architecture I was interviewing, for example. So you say, so you are not asking necessarily just about how they use platforms for learning. You ask them, okay, so you wake up, what do you do when you wake up? And when do you go to, like, how much time do you spend at uni? You know, and you try to understand your user completely. So you just want to know, you know, everything about their life, basically, which is related to your product. And you try to piece together all information, and as well, like other products they use and how they use them and why they use them and what they don't like, what they like, you know, because like, what do you find if people usually, well, I can refer to education or analytics. So basically people don't use just one source. So even like when you study, you just don't use one source, you know, so it's kind of okay, you know, you don't try to convince everyone, just leave everything behind and just come and buy my product. It's completely fine. You just try to be better than them or just complement others people's product as well. So you try to find out what they don't have and you can bring to them. So yeah, so that means like we try to identify their needs, their pain points, and then ideate solutions for these and prototype, and then again you test it and again. Yeah, so so who is involved? So we work cross-functionally and it's a multidisciplinary approach. So this really famous picture with elephants. So why we do it is just because everyone brings different expertise or different level of expertise. Sometimes, you know, when you try to bring your product internationally, it's great to have other cultural backgrounds, because people, for example, process information or make decisions differently according to where they are from, what are their beliefs, customs and stuff, you know, so that's why it's important. So usually we interact or bring solutions along with product teams. So product managers are people who are more concerned with strategy. So those are people who are basically creating a roadmap and they say, okay, so in 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, we should be there and there. And then we have analytics teams. So we try to get from them some quantitative data because they know, like, for example, what features, you know, is used by whom. And, you know, you can see some individual differences and a bunch of other stuff. And then design teams. So designers are people who are creating prototypes usually. But yeah, as I said, sometimes smaller organizations then merge the roles. And I feel like people who are hiring, they don't really understand what's difference between different UX roles as well. So sometimes, like, for example, my best friend, she's product manager, but her part of the role is UX research. and they don't have a researcher because she is the researcher, and as well she's a product manager. And then she has a designer who makes all that, you know, tech stuff, prototypes and stuff. And then, for example, in startup before I worked, I used to be a designer a little bit because they didn't have designer. So I need to learn how to prototype, you know, and use the tools. So, so sometimes it happens that people looking for designer, but what they're looking really for is researcher who can do design, you know, but like still designers need to know psychological principles because there is a lot of going on how to design a page so we don't overload someone's cognition and stuff. So there is like a lot of rules about that. And then tech teams, so those are developers who are creating final products. So as well, you need to kind of influence them as well. So they need to understand the users even though they don't speak to them, because sometimes it happens that you do the research, everyone understands, and then they create something which we call ticket. So it comes to developers and they don't really understand. So they, even though we did all the research, designers did this part, did their part, you know, then tech teams, they don't get it. So they build something completely different because they think, oh, but you know, I got it this way, so I thought you wanted this. So we need to always make sure like everyone is on the same page. And then the research teams, which is us. And then, okay. So as I mentioned, UX research and design. So as a researcher, or as a researcher, you are usually involved in all the stages besides prototyping, because as I mentioned, designers do the prototypes. But it's not really difficult actually. If you are really creative, you can do it and learn it really quick. You don't even need to be so creative, I would say. And obviously, why is it relevant to business psychology? Because there is a lot of psychology going on. So everything we do, you know, it's about behavior or even like how you design things. And then the research skills. So they sometimes prefer people with master's degrees or PhDs, and it's just because they want to make sure that you understand research methods really well, which usually people with PhD should. So that's the reason. And problem solving skills, because we need to be creative. So like, you know, we not just identify what to do, but we can as well suggest how to improve things. And then storytelling, you should be able to explain everything and in different ways, because people learn differently. So you should bear in mind that, you know, if you're going to talk to developers, they don't really understand, you know, necessarily your terminology, or they are not, you know, as empathic as you or whatever. Yeah, maybe I've just, you know, maybe they are, I don't know. Yeah, so process usually, so it's really similar as you do your dissertation. So for example, you know, you always write a background or summary of the project or existing research, and then you build a hypothesis. So you create business objective, research objectives, and then you design methods. So again, you suggest like how you are going to get there, and then how you're going to analyze the data and how you're going to evaluate success. So this is usually a big part as well. And as well, you should be mindful how you are going to share insights. And that really varies from company to company, because some people are more traditional, so they just do presentations. But then if you work with designer, there are really creative ways how to do it. So they, for example, draw stories, you know, and it looks like comic book, and then everyone just can see that. But yeah, there are many ways basically how to share insights. Or you can create something which we call internal Wikipedia or intranet, so you can share insights there. I think that's really good actually method how to get everyone on the same page, even if you don't work with them all the time, because sometimes when you work in startup, you have many contractors, so they are not there, you know, necessarily all the time, so they can get to it when they have time. Yeah, and this is just a little example how you can use psychology. So in appendix, you have all the case study, how I was working on this e-learning platform. And then, well, there's whole bunch of outcomes from it. And I think, yeah, working in startup is really rewarding because you influence everything literally, which you don't get as much in bigger organization, but and as well you can be more creative in your suggestions how to change things. So for example, yeah, we needed to kind of recreate the strategy of the startup. So and as it was e-learning platform, I found that usually when people find something online or buy the course like on e-learning platform, that platform doesn't care if you are going to finish it because they already took your money, right? So so it's just yeah, on you if you're going there or not. So we were thinking we could just keep them engaged somehow and just make sure they would just keep going there, which helps you too, because obviously then, you know, it's a more successful platform. So yeah, so this is kind of, I don't know how far you got with these things, but it's basically I use some motivational theories, and combi model, it's something which we call behavioral design. So that's how you want, you try to change someone's behavior. Lukas is laughing because it's kind of what I'm trying to explain in 5 minutes. It's kind of comprehensive. So so yeah, so basically
I'm just taking notes, and I will be asking questions later on.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, so my point was to increase the retention and engagement of our users. So I created steps according to psychological models that should theoretically work on people to keep them engaged and, you know, kind of hooked on the platform. So, you know, I used all these psychological theories, and then they will have, you know, that they can create what they want to do. And then they would have little dashboard, you know, and it will be kind of gamification elements there, and they can see the progress, you know, they will collect points and stuff. So it's kind of, but we didn't build it at the end, so because they struggled to find funding. So that's why I can use it as case study.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So you know what? I will try to wrap it up a little bit, and you will just tell me whether I understood. And I will stick to that example with that classroom. So let's say we have an empty classroom, and we would like to have an excellent classroom designed to boost creativity. And you mentioned the waterfall project management approach, which would basically mean that you as the consultant or the vendor would talk to the head of the department, and the head of the department would say, okay, we need 10 chairs, we need a whiteboard and something, I don't know, a smart TV, and that's basically it. And then you would deliver, and then students would have their classroom already designed.
Yeah.
And this is not really an excellent user experience, I would say. UX, you call it, user experience. So a different approach would be the one that you call design thinking approach. And you mentioned that it consisted of 5 stages. And the first one was empathize. So basically, as far as I understood, you would ask us questions, you would follow us, you would try to figure out all of the users, all of the students that would use the classroom, you would try to figure out what their needs are. That's the first stage. Then the second stage was define. That means that you would probably together with us, with the students, define what our needs are and what's like the overarching, I don't know, purpose of that classroom. And then we will start creating. The third stage is called ideate, if I remember. And all of us would be like brainstorming and trying to figure out, would students be involved in that brainstorming?
So actually, there are some methods that you can be, like end users can be involved in ideation. So, but yeah, it's a little bit different. So basically,
okay, just to simplify it. And then the next stage is prototype, and that means that you would like
you
what?
File. So basically, for example, and empathize. So you talk to students. So they say, "Oh, I learned better with whiteboard," or "I learned better with just watching videos." So then you try to, you know, kind of as well prioritize what's the best. And as well, so basically in empathize stage, you just talk. So you just collect data. And then define, you analyze data. And then when you develop suggestions, so, you know, so then you try to, and as well prioritize. So, you know, you obviously necessarily school maybe doesn't have money for, you know, I don't know what, like, you know, best equipment. So they buy maybe what majority wanted, but still it's feasible for the organization or for the school. So
okay, so basically if 12 of us, there's 15 of us, but if 12 of us say that the best way to learn for us is to be horizontal, then you would buy a sofa for
maybe then you go ideate, and then you talk to different years. So then you talk to, I don't know how school works, but you would talk to, you know, people who
school doesn't. I'm afraid that schools don't work this way. Schools prefer the waterfall approach, but let's pretend that we are using the design thinking approach. And what was the prototyping stage about? Is it that you would equip that room and we would start using it, or?
Yeah, so for example, you would just you can make different versions. So we find that, like, okay, so let's do variations. So maybe I'm going to combine ABC in one basically one version. Then in second version, I'm going to combine A and C. And in third version, I'm going to combine, I don't know what I said, A and B, for example. And then you test it, and you test all three. And again, you come to students, so you empathize again, and they tell you, oh, so actually this works better, this doesn't work, and like why? And you know, and why is a great question. If you do interviews with anyone, just ask why, then people looking at you like, are you stupid? Because you can assume what they want to say, but you need to hear them, you know, to say it. So, you know, so people actually get really defensive when you ask why, like 5 times, but then you just, you know, it's actually, that's when you get real insights, you know.
Okay, so basically you just said that, for example, the outcome of the prototyping stage would be like 3 different versions of classroom, and then you would be observing us, and then you would ask us for feedback, and then we would vote, and then there is the right solution.
I wouldn't, you don't vote, basically. You don't have the power as collective. We will talk to you individually, and then we basically analyze collectively all data we basically collected. So we will just look at there's something which we call thematic analysis. So you just, you know, look at everything which every individual says, and then you try to find maybe like same topics, and and even in the same topics you can say, oh, this is basically the same, but or same topic, but they are different. So you can see individual differences already. But you always try to, you know, pinpoint some themes, and then within those themes you can see what people say, and then you can see if there are differences or not, and then you try to suggest something.
So can I see if I understand it? You know, this is a really silly example, but you know The Apprentice? Yeah, so is it kind of, is that the beginning process then?
I've never watched it. I just know it exists. Yeah,
because they have to, like, they have their they have to come up with something, but that's kind of the top-down, like, waterfall approach then, I guess, because they have to come up with something, and then at the end, and they have to, like, also empathize and talk with people about customers and users, like how does it work? But it's kind of,
yeah, I can't relate to that because I don't really know, you know.
Okay, well,
usually they usually bring their own solutions already.
Yeah, so it's not
without asking like clients or end users while creating those projects. So yes, that would be a typical waterfall approach.
Sounds like that. It's usually what I recall, you know, like we had this great teacher in Leeds, and she was lovely, but you know, she, even though she was business psychologist, basically, she decided she's going to tell us how we are going to learn for her module. So she was like, so you're going to read this, you are going to do this exercise and this and that. I was like, and this time, you know, and this day of the week. I was like, why? It's just like, we don't want to do it, you know? So there was kind of like, if, you know, if you are trying to study, for example, and someone tells you, oh, you are going to do it on Thursday because I said so, you know, then that's not what UX is about. We should go to you as you are the one who is learning things. So I'm going to you and I was like, okay, so what's, for example, what's your timetable at school? Do you work? You know, do you have part-time job? Do you have full-time job? How many hours do you work? Do you have lunch? You know, and all these questions which are seemingly not related, but you try to figure out how to make it easy for you. So then, for example, I will try to, even if I want to force you to study at certain times, I try to figure out when it's convenient for you. So, you know, it's more like to fit it to people's lifestyle. Does it make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does make sense actually. Even with what you just said about the learning, I think that really made it clear, and it's actually about the customer, the student, the employee. It's about, asking them, coming from their side, coming to their point of view, and then basically like building it from there. Because I guess I'm just guessing, if you have the strong foundation in that, then it's much easier to move on, rather than like starting, let's say, on the top and then realizing that the base is not really strong because the people that are building the structure are not happy or not satisfied or not really able to perform as well because of different reasons. So yeah, I think the learning example really made it clear.
Yeah. I wanted to say something, now I forgot. Yeah.
Katka, may be a silly idea, but could we use those design thinking steps to design like our online workshops that we have? Like, first of all, like trying to empathize and then trying to figure out what respective needs are and what respective students would really need to learn and their preferred style, and then maybe ideating how to design the lecture or the workshop, and then to test it, and then receiving feedback. Would that work?
Yeah. Well, for example, what I find really interesting, because I'm really into learning, and like, for example, you can test the content. So for example, if you have even help desks in the companies, so usually they will tell you, we have this content, so people learn by this. And it's like, how do you know that? Because we are experienced, and because they studied it, or they've been in the company for 15 years. So, I know because I know. And then, for example, you look at the content and then you test it with people and they don't really understand what so it's kind of, I can actually understand how to fix my problem, but not really, So even like you can test content or anything. And this is what I wanted to say, which I remembered now. So you can even try it in your classroom. So for example, when you do qualitative interviews in UX, which blew my mind when I actually learned about it firstly. So they say with 5 users, you uncover 80% of problems. And it really works, because me as a researcher, I was just like, what? Because and I usually did just quants in my studies. So my dissertations both were quantitative. So I was just doing statistics basically. And you need at least 100 people, 150, like to predict something. And then someone tells you, you need just 5 users and it uncover 80% of problems. And you're just like, no. and it really works. So even if you...
But Katka, is it like 5 randomly chosen users that would serve the purpose?
Well, some people say, but I wouldn't just go that far. I would say, you still need to think as researcher, as normal researcher, not just UX. You try to diversify your sample. So it's always good to, but it really depends on your product. So for example, when I was doing an e-learning platform, so I recruited 6 people, but I recruited them from different you know, parts over the world. So I was speaking with someone from Peru and someone from Saudi, then France, and then from Canada, I think. So it was really diversified, but you know, I didn't have really old users, because old users usually didn't learn this type of architecture because it was very technical, and yeah, it came from other research I did, you know, so I knew about this topic. So kind of, you know, it's kind of common sense, and as well you need to combine. For example, you know, I'm not going to ask your students, you know, like obviously I'm going to talk to your students what they want, how they want to learn. So I'm just going to pick from them, right? I'm not going to ask someone who is in different class, or, you know, and stuff like that. So,
a different question is, what kind of, if you are the person responsible for running such a project, if you are a person responsible for running design thinking projects for a client, or for to create a new platform or whatever, what are the key skills that you need to possess?
Key skills, yeah, you need to understand research methods. And as I said, they usually look for people who study psychology in any kind, you know, or basically human interaction, human-computer interaction, or ethnography is a big part. Like people really want people who study ethnography, because you can observe and you can make sense out of the observation really well. But I think you don't need to study ethnography if you are really empathic, you know, and kind of, you know, so usually they just want, and as well, like you need to understand research methods, traditional one, of course, like you don't need to, if you are going for junior roles, well, it depends, because like, for example, for this organization, they didn't have time to train me, so I already needed to know something. So, but like if you have junior roles, they train you, like in every company, they try to give you basic training. So even if you don't have product research experience, then, you know, just understanding research methods and statistics, and, you know, like samples and, you know, these basics. So that's what they want. And as well, like, I think this is kind of what I found really in every job. People are looking for people who are determined. So, and as well, people looking for attitude. So maybe that's a good advice for you. So when you will be looking for jobs, you know, just show proactivity, because there's something which they can't teach you, you know, and this is what got me a job, you know, for example, every time, because they said, oh, you're really proactive, you know, and, you know, sometimes, I don't know, like 5 years, I'm 30 now. So when I was like 22, 3, I was just like, oh, all these people, how they, you know, did all these great things. And now you have LinkedIn. So I can imagine you just see LinkedIn, all these successful people, but, you know, there is a lot of failure before that. so which no one is going to show you, obviously, you know, so
Katka, you were talking about being proactive, and Mario is proactive, and he's asking another question. He raised his hand, so feel free to ask.
Shoot.
Okay, so you mentioned that it is really appreciated to having some kind of psychological knowledge. You also said that you use some psychological knowledge to get people involved, to get you know, to like thing. So I would like to know some more about that. How does it work? In a tangible way, what can you actually use from a psychological point of view to make the project a little bit more appreciated?
Well, it really depends. Like, you know, it's a really broad question. So really that varies. But, you know, if you learn about UX, you have all these like textbook principles. For example, if you try to design a website here, so basically you need to come from decision-making literature. So decision-making, usually basics is like you have system 1 and 2. So I don't know if you heard about it or if you covered it, but so for example, it's a lot of about how not to overload a person, like their cognition, because your cognition is really limited and your brain is lazy, just to say it like really likely. So basically, you know, there are principles that are tested already. So if you look for principles, so for example, you know, if I'm going to a new website and I try to find something, it's basically proven that like I need to find it in one minute, otherwise I will leave the page. You know, I will never return probably, so you lost me, you know. And or for example, you know, you process the information like, I don't know, in certain milliseconds, I don't know the exact number now, you know. So basically, or for example, you have a lot of eye tracking, so people, you know, learn or scan the page in certain patterns. So you need to know how, or for example, if you make small changes, you need to make really, really small changes, really subtle. Otherwise, you just already overloading someone's cognition who is used to your page, because you make them think, and this is what you don't want. You just want to, you know, make pages or websites that you don't think about it, what you are reading, for example, you know, it's really nice, you know, to your eye and everything. But then when you have findings, then what I'm really interested in behavioral aspects. So for example, it's a lot of how you make people to develop new habits, or how to beat their old habits, for example. So there is, or as I mentioned, you know, you want someone to keep engaged or, you know, motivated to stay, to study, or like basically stay enrolled in your courses and finish them. So then you try to implement theories of motivation. Like motivation is a big thing as well. So it's usually decision-making literature, motivation, theories of motivation, models, and yeah, it's usually about cognition and behavior and behavioral styles. And then like it really depends, because, you know, like in tech you have anything. So, and as business psychologists, you can cover really anything. So yeah, it's a really broad question, you know, and I don't know, like I can't give, I have examples from my current work. I just can't speak about it because, you know, like that's in our policies. So I can't give you really a real example from what we do here. But yeah, from the e-learning platform, as I mentioned. So for example, yeah, you have behavioral theories about, which is called goal hierarchy theory. So that's really good theory if you want to try to try to change someone's attitude, and that's what people use in trainings in general. So, and it says you need to link your behaviors, your daily behaviors, to your higher values. And I love this theory. That's my favorite, basically, because it really works. And then as well, if you look at it from behavioral change perspective, is not just change someone's motivation, but do you need to combine different theories, you know, and then it's up to you and about your knowledge, how you're going to combine them and create some suggestions that should theoretically work, but you don't know until you prototype and test it, you know. So it's like you are running experiments all the time. So that's kind of how it works. I don't know if it makes sense though.
Yeah, it actually does. So thank you a lot.
Yeah, because I can give you, you know, after presentation, I can give you some reading list or whatever. So it's like, I think it makes more sense, you know, but it's really difficult to explain in an hour.
Emma, just ask.
Yeah, I didn't know where did you, Mario, find that hand? Okay, it doesn't matter. I'll use mine. But you were mentioning the proactivity while during the interviews, or just how you said that the proactivity basically gave you all your jobs. How does that look during an interview? How during an interview you show that you're proactive?
Well, I used to do in my previous job interviews, you can see it, but as well, like, you know, you can't expect, you know, this is what I found sometimes, you know, when you are just studying and you see all these prodigy students who are already working for PwC, it's like, I don't, you know, I don't mean the type of proactivity. I think what's available to you, just use it, you know. What I did, for example, but I'm not saying you should be this extreme, but it's just I really wanted to change jobs. So I had full-time job, then I was working on startups. So I basically, and I was commuting as well, because that was my first job after uni as business psychologist. And London is crazy big. And in London, you have business psychology jobs maybe for entry levels in a year. So I was commuting like hour and a half, 3 hours a day, basically. So you can imagine I left home half seven. I came home 7. Then I was working on the startup until 10. And I was doing this like 3 months, you know. So then like, if you say something like this to someone at the interview, they're just like, oh, you really liked what you are doing, you know, or, you know, so it's kind of that kind of stuff. But I appreciate that not everyone has opportunity, and it's really important as well. But like what I found, when you really try and when you know what you want, opportunity will come somehow. So that's actually like, you know, what I found in my life. That's actually really true. You just need to really try. And then, you know, something will pop up, you know. So
I'll give you another example. If you are asking about proactivity, last week we had a discussion with Luke, and I can pronounce his surname, Lukas Czeszkowski, from Poland. He was speaking about employer branding, and being proactive means that after the session you connect with him via LinkedIn, you send him an email saying what an excellent discussion and interview, I'm very interested in that topic, could you please provide me with links to some resources or books? And then maybe asking him for a short 10-minute conf call, then offering him some help, then asking to be connected with someone else from his department, and then just slowly getting involved into it. So basically that means that you are proactive, because just listening to the speech and asking questions is okay, but that's what the majority of students do. But if you do one more step or 2 more steps, somehow you get in touch with excellent people and the world opens up. That's my notion of being proactive.
I have another advice. So, you know, like when you go to do your master's in business school in UK, yeah, so you spend like 11 grand on 1 year, and then they all, what they're talking about, just network. And it's like, and I'm not really into networking, you know, I find it really artificial, and I don't know, probably you can tell, but I like being authentic. So I don't like
same.
Yes, for me, if like we used to go with my classmates, so it's like, and you just throw you there, and you just feel you have to say something and something smart, you know. And then I found, no, just try to make friends. Don't even talk about work. You know, and like, because who is going to give you a job? Someone who likes you genuinely, not someone who, you know, like this real world, like no one, like obviously you need to know something, but if you are a graduate, obviously no one expects you to know too much or have like 5 years experience. Yeah, I know, like they say it in job descriptions, but that's ideal situation, you know, no one really wants that. But what give you a job is just because you are likable, you know, and people can see if you are switched on or not, you know. So I wouldn't be really worried, you know, like if you, and as well, like another advice I could give you is just really do what you like, you know, because that's what stands out, because people can feel you love what you do. And then that's as well, like, you know, firstly, if you are, because for example, if you really want to do something, but it's not really your thing, and then you are going to do all this advice, like, oh, and now I'm going to email this person and ask him, but I don't really care about the topic. I just really need the job to pay bills. It's not going to give you anything anyway, you know, because people can kind of sense it. So really pick something which you really love, and then try to, you know, yeah. And then, you know, I love when people reach out, you know, because like, why not? Like my boss, like she's as well, like, you know, she had her career and she does things for free for startups, for example, I recently learned. So because, you know, because you just want to give back, you know, and like it's always, you know, nice to see someone who's passionate about what you do, and, you know, just to kind of, yeah, literally give back, you know.
Katka, I also have an opposing view. Yeah. It's very nice if you say do what you love and be involved in projects that you enjoy doing. But from my perspective, it also works the other way around. You don't know what you like, you don't know what you love. You start doing something, And the more you learn about that topic, it might help you to just fall in love with that particular topic without loving it at the very beginning. So maybe just waiting to find something that I really love and then being proactive. I say, be proactive, try plenty of things, and you will fall in love with something.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, because for example, I used to be an accountant in Slovakia.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what I did. And it's just like, and that's why I left, because it was okay, I was good at it, but I was just like, you know, like, why would I do this? I don't really know. And and then I realized I don't want to do this another 20 years, you know, and I didn't even know, like, and then I went to study to UK business management, my degree. And then I learned about like business psychology. I didn't know I can study it here, but I was learning for my personal reasons about psychology. And then I discovered, and I was like, I really picked a wrong course, you know. And then basically I got into like, oh, there is business psychology, and actually I went to Leeds, and I was like, I love everything about it. And I didn't even know what it was, you know, initially as much, because I wanted to be a coach. You know, that was my so that's actually that's the thing. You're just trying to find what you really like. So it's nothing wrong about, but like still you should be kind of somewhere where you know, okay, like this makes me kind of happy when I'm reading about it. You know, it doesn't have to be like, oh, because for example, what I studied in Leeds, I love everything. Like when I graduated, I wanted to implement like sustainable processes in organizations. So that's what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to be like consultant who makes organization more sustainable, you know. And then randomly I got to UX because my best friend was product manager, and she was like, and why you don't do UX? You would be great at it. I was like, oh. So I started learning, you know, and I was just learning by myself. So it's not like, you know, you need to do something which is directly covered in your studies. You can just find something related, and your diploma, it gives you credibility, but it's not something, you know, in 15 years it's not going to be like, you know, the research, you know, it's different. So, you know, everyone, like, it's no one's going to take it from you, you know. You always will have this degree or whatever, but it's up to you how you will top up your knowledge, you know. So just try to find what you like. Yeah. So
I agree with that a lot, because I'm finding that in my course, in the course that we're doing here in psychology, because now we have electives and everything. So now I'm like, oh, I know kind of what I want to do more, because but I enjoy all of it, but I enjoy some things, you know, more than others. Actually, Ivanka has a question and she can't raise the hand on the Zoom, so I'm gonna ask it. She's trying to be proactive. Yeah. It is, if you, Katka, could recommend us some literature or maybe even articles and blogs, I think about just general user design, I guess.
Yeah. So basically I have, and I don't know if you know medium.com. So there are articles written by literally anyone who understands the topic, and you can find anything there. So like I have entire reading list, and I literally just learn from that. And everything I know, I just usually know from there. It's not like scientific source. So like if you know, want to top up, then you need to do some Google search, but it's kind of which gives you, I can share with you my reading list basically. Like you can add me on LinkedIn or just ping me on LinkedIn, you know. You just need to find me, because I don't state my name anywhere, like because you can't Google me, which I like. So if you Google my name, you won't find me. So you can.
I think Lukas has already sent us your profile.
Yeah, I will reply, you know. So like, just,
okay, thank you.
You can message me, anyone, and I will just share with you what I have. And as well, like I've written some case studies on what I did in the startup. So, and as well, my colleague, she's running a blog actually, which is pretty good. So I can share that with you too.
Thank you so much. That's really awesome.
Excellent. Well, it's 6 o'clock on the dot. Last question. Is there anyone who would like to ask and was not able to raise their hand?
I just before we finish, just thank you for the discussion with you and your answers and the opportunity we have to write you after. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope it wasn't too confusing.
No, it was very nice.
Thank you for the advices also.
That's all right. Yeah,
Thank you very much for thoughtful thoughts. It was very, very nice.